I married a man who promised me forever, who looked into my eyes and swore he'd love me until death do us part. Turns out, he meant that more literally than I realized, because my husband didn't want my heart. He wanted my kidneys, my liver, every organ I had, and he was willing to kill me slowly, carefully, lovingly to get them. This is the story of how I discovered the man I loved was actually a monster orchestrating the ultimate betrayal, and how I turned his twisted scheme into his own downfall. I still remember the way his eyes lit up when he first asked me out. Jake Morrison, tall, charming, with that crooked smile that made my knees weak every single time. He worked in medical sales, or so he said, always traveling between hospitals and clinics. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Portland, one of those perfect movie moment encounters where he offered to pay for my latte after I'd forgotten my wallet. Consider it an investment in getting to know you, he'd said with a wink, and God, did I fall for it, hard. Looking back now, I realize how perfectly orchestrated everything was, how he seemed to know exactly what to say, exactly when to say it. He'd text me good morning before I even woke up, send flowers to my office for no reason at all, remember every little detail I mentioned in passing. When I told him I loved old jazz music, he surprised me with tickets to a vintage jazz club the next weekend. When I mentioned my mom's favorite flowers were peonies, he showed up at our third date with a bouquet. I pay attention, he'd whisper, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, because you're worth paying attention to. 3 months in, he proposed. I know. It sounds crazy fast, right? But when you're caught up in that whirlwind, when someone makes you feel like you're the only person in the world that matters, logic takes a back seat. My best friend Emma tried to pump the brakes, suggested we slow down, maybe live together first. You barely know this guy, she'd said over wine one night, but I was defensive, convinced she was just jealous that I'd found something real. When you know, I'd snapped back. Those words haunt me now. The wedding was intimate, just close family and a few friends at a small chapel in Hood River. Jake insisted on keeping it simple, said he wanted to save money for our future, for the life we'd build together. I thought it was sweet, thoughtful even. My dad walked me down the aisle, and I swear I saw tears in Jake's eyes when I reached him. You're everything I've ever wanted, he whispered during our vows, and I believed him. God help me. I believed every single word. The honeymoon was perfect. 2 weeks in Maui, days spent on beaches and nights tangled in hotel sheets. He was attentive, loving, almost obsessive about making sure I was happy. But there were moments, small ones I brushed off at the time, where something felt off, like when I got a minor cut while hiking, and he examined it with this clinical intensity that seemed beyond normal concern, or when he asked detailed questions about my medical history, my family's health background. Just want to know everything about my wife, he'd said with that disarming smile. Red flags I was too in love to see. We settled into married life in his apartment, our apartment now, in the Pearl District. Jake worked long hours, often coming home late with stories about difficult clients and hospital bureaucracy. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, which meant I was alone most days. That's when things started to change. Slowly at first, then all at once. It started with fatigue. I'd wake up exhausted no matter how much I slept, drag myself through work projects that used to energize me. I chalked it up to the adjustment of married life, maybe stress from trying to build my client base. But then came the nausea, the dizziness, the weird tremors in my hands. You should see a doctor, Jake said one morning, his voice measured, almost rehearsed. I can set something up. I know some excellent physicians through work. That should have been my first real warning sign. The eagerness in his offer, the way his eyes lit up just a fraction too much. But I was feeling like garbage, so I agreed. He scheduled an appointment with Dr. Raymond Chen, a specialist at Oregon Health Sciences University. He's the best, Jake assured me. If something's wrong, he'll figure it out. Dr. Chen ran test after test, blood work, imaging, biopsies. Each visit, Jake insisted on coming along, asking technical questions that seemed beyond what a concerned husband would typically know. He'd take notes, lots of them, in a small leather journal he never let me see. Just trying to understand what's happening to you, he'd explain when I asked. Want to make sure we're doing everything right. But I wasn't getting better. If anything, I was getting worse. My energy plummeted, my weight dropped, and some mornings I could barely get out of bed. Emma visited one afternoon, brought soup and concern. She sat next to me on the couch studying my face with worried eyes. You look terrible, sweetie. Really terrible. What are the doctors saying? They don't know yet, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Still running tests. And Jake? How's he handling all this? I paused, realizing something I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. He's calm. Really calm. Almost too calm, you know? Like this. Doesn't faze him at all. Emma's expression darkened. That's weird, don't you think? If my partner was sick like this, I'd be losing my mind. I wanted to defend him, to explain that maybe he was just being strong for me, keeping it together so I didn't have to worry. But deep down, something uncomfortable was starting to take root. Why was he so composed? Why did he seem almost clinical about my deterioration? The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. Jake had left for work in a rush, said something about an emergency meeting. In his hurry, he'd forgotten his phone on the kitchen counter. I heard it buzz repeatedly, watched the screen light up with text after text. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I'm not that person. Never have been. But something made me pick it up. Intuition, maybe. Or just the growing sense that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. The phone wasn't locked. Another red flag I'd missed. He'd always been so careful about privacy. So why would he suddenly leave it completely accessible? Unless he'd gotten complacent, confident that I was too trusting, too sick to question anything anymore. I opened the messages, and my blood ran cold. The first thread was with Dr. Chen, my doctor, the man who was supposed to be figuring out what was wrong with me. Patient is progressing as expected. Liver values declining on schedule. Kidney function following projected timeline. Progressing as expected? On schedule? What the hell did that mean? I scrolled up, hands shaking, nausea rising that had nothing to do with my mysterious illness. She's showing symptoms right on track. Another month, maybe 6 weeks max, and we'll have optimal conditions for harvest. Harvest. The words seemed to pulse on the screen, growing larger, more monstrous with each second I stared at it. Harvest. Like I was crops. Like I was livestock. Like I was nothing more than a collection of parts waiting to be extracted and sold. My fingers moved frantically now, opening more messages, more threads. There was one with someone named Marcus. Got a buyer lined up for the kidneys. Premium price for young, healthy organs. Your wife's blood type is perfect. We're looking at least $300K for the pair. Another with a woman named Sandra. Liver market is hot right now. If you can deliver within the window, I've got clients willing to pay top dollar. Just make sure she doesn't catch on. And then one more. This one from Dr. Chen. The poisoning protocol is working perfectly. Small doses, untraceable in standard tests. She'll be weak enough for transport soon. Remember, we need her alive until extraction. Dead organs aren't worth nearly as much. Poisoning. Protocol. Transport. Extraction. The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself, trying to process what I was reading. My husband, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd cried at our wedding, who'd whispered sweet nothings on our honeymoon, was systematically poisoning me, was destroying my organs from the inside so he could what? Sell them? Harvest them like I was some kind of human farm? I thought I might throw up. Actually throw up. Right there in our pristine kitchen with its marble countertops and stainless steel appliances that Jake had been so proud of. This apartment that I'd thought was our home was actually just the pen where he'd been fattening me up for slaughter. My mind raced back through the past months. The vitamins he insisted I take every morning. Just want you healthy, babe. The special smoothies he'd make, saying they'd boost my energy. The meals he'd prepare, always so insistent that I finish everything on my plate. Jesus Christ. He'd been poisoning me the entire time. Every act of love, every gesture of care had been calculated manipulation, a slow execution, disguised as devotion. I heard the apartment door unlock. Jake was back. Panic flooded my system, cutting through the fog of revelation. I couldn't let him know I'd found out. Not yet. Not when I was this weak, this vulnerable. I closed the messages, set his phone back exactly where I'd found it, and stumbled to the couch. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. "Hey, babe," Jake called out, his voice sickeningly cheerful. "Forgot my phone. How you feeling?" How was I feeling? Like I'd married a monster. Like the man I loved had never existed at all. Like I was living in a horror movie except it was real. And the killer was walking toward me with that same charming smile that had made me fall in love in the first place. "Tired," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. Really tired. He crossed the room, pressed a kiss to my forehead. His lips felt like ice. Or maybe I was just finally seeing him for what he really was. Cold, calculating, completely devoid of the humanity he'd been pretending to possess. "That's okay," he murmured, stroking my hair. "Rest is good for you. I'll make you some soup for dinner, okay? Got a new recipe I want to try. More poison, more slow death served with a side of fake concern." "Sounds great," I lied, forcing a weak smile. He grabbed his phone, checked it briefly, and seemed satisfied that nothing was amiss. I've got to head back to the office, but I'll be home by 6. Take your vitamins, okay? They're really important right now. Vitamins. Right. I will, I promised, knowing I'd never touch another thing he gave me ever again. The moment he left, I moved into action. Whatever poison he'd been giving me had made me weak, but terror is one hell of a motivator. I dumped every vitamin, every supplement, every medication he'd ever given me down the toilet, flushed them all away like the toxic garbage they were. Then I started searching the apartment. The laptop he kept locked in his office drawer, found the key taped under his desk, because apparently Jake wasn't as smart as he thought he was. Inside were files. So many files. Patient profiles, medical records, organ matching databases. And there, in a folder labeled Project Sarah, my name, my project, like I was a business transaction, was everything. My blood type, my medical history going back years, detailed notes about my health metrics. But here's what made me want to scream. Records showing he'd been monitoring me for 6 months before we even met. That coffee shop encounter? Planned. He'd researched me, studied my routines, engineered our entire relationship from day one. The investment he'd mentioned paying for my latte? He meant it literally. I was an investment, a walking, talking collection of valuable organs he intended to harvest and sell. There were other folders too. Other women. Jessica from Seattle, deceased, organs harvested. Melissa from Sacramento, currently in processing. Amanda from San Francisco, under cultivation. Under cultivation. Like we were plants. Like we were things. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. This wasn't just about my husband wanting to kill me for my organs. This was a systematic operation. Jake wasn't even his real name. It was Daniel Reeves, and he had a criminal record spanning 3 states. Medical fraud, identity theft, suspected involvement in organ trafficking, though never enough evidence to convict. He'd moved, changed names, started over. And Dr. Chen wasn't a respected specialist. He was a disgraced surgeon who'd lost his medical license 5 years ago for ethical violations. They'd built an entire network, a pipeline of women targeted, courted, married, poisoned, and harvested. And I was just the latest victim in what looked like a very profitable enterprise. But here's the thing about being pushed to the edge of death. You stop being afraid. You get angry. Furious, actually. This man had stolen months of my life, poisoned my body, made me believe I was sick when he was the sickness all along. He'd made me doubt myself, made me weak, made me, dependent on him. And he'd done it all with that goddamn smile on his face. Well, guess what? I was done being the victim. Done being the prey. If Jake, or Daniel, or whatever his real name was, thought I'd just roll over and let him harvest my organs, he had severely underestimated who he'd married. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. Screenshots, files, printed documents, loaded it all onto a flash drive and my cloud backup. Then I did something that probably saved my life. I reached out to Emma. I need your help, I texted her. And I need you not to ask questions right now. Can you come get me? Emma, bless her, showed up 30 minutes later. I was packed, weak but determined, with every piece of evidence safely stored and ready to explode Jake's entire operation. What's happening? She demanded as she helped me to her car. He's been poisoning me, I said flatly. My husband is part of an organ trafficking ring, and I'm supposed to be his next harvest. Emma's face went pale, but to her credit, she didn't hesitate. We're going to the police, right now. But I shook my head. Not yet. If we go now, he'll run. They'll all run. We need to be strategic about this. Catch them all at once. That's when my vindictive side really kicked in. Jake thought he was the mastermind? That he'd planned everything so perfectly? Well, 2 could play the manipulation game. And I had something he didn't. Righteous fury and nothing left to lose. Over the next week, from the safety of Emma's apartment, I orchestrated the biggest betrayal Jake never saw coming. I contacted the FBI, specifically their human trafficking division, laid out everything I'd found, provided all the evidence. They were skeptical at first. Organ trafficking operations this sophisticated don't come along every day. But the documentation was irrefutable. The other victims, the financial records, the medical files, it was all there. We'll need you to go back, Agent Martinez told me during our 3rd meeting. Wear a wire, get him to talk about it. We need recorded confession to make this stick. My blood ran cold at the thought of facing Jake again, of being back in that apartment where he'd slowly been killing me. But then I thought about Jessica, about Melissa, about Amanda, about all the women whose names I'd found in those files, whose lives had been stolen because some sick bastard saw them as nothing more than inventory. I'll do it, I said. They moved fast after that. Got Me to a real doctor, one who wasn't part of a criminal conspiracy, who confirmed poisoning. Heavy metals specifically, administered in small doses over time. Enough to damage organs but not kill outright. Not yet anyway. The doctor started me on chelation therapy, flushing the toxins from my system. Within days, I could feel the fog lifting, my strength slowly returning. The FBI set up surveillance around the apartment, wired me up with recording equipment so small you'd never know it was. There, coached me on what to say, how to draw Jake into admitting everything. And then, exactly 1 week after I'd fled, I went back home. Jake's face when he opened the door was priceless. Shock, followed quickly by concern, followed by something darker I'd never seen before. Or maybe I just never looked closely enough. "Sarah, baby, where have you been? I've been losing my mind." He pulled me into a hug that made my skin crawl. "I came home and you were just gone. I've been calling Emma, your parents, everyone. What happened?" I pulled back, making my expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry. I freaked out, felt so sick and scared. And I went to Emma's to clear my head. I should have called. I'm sorry." He studied me, and I could practically see the calculations happening behind his eyes. Was I suspicious? Had I figured anything out? Was this a trap? "It's okay," he finally said, leading me inside. "You're here now. That's what matters. But babe, you need to be more careful, especially as sick as you've been. What if something had happened to you? What if something had happened to me? Rich, coming from the man actively making sure something would happen to me." "I know," I said, sitting on the couch. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. About being sick." Jake's posture changed slightly, more attentive. "Of course. What's on your mind?" This was it, the moment of truth. I took a breath, channeling every ounce of acting ability I possessed. "I'm scared, Jake. Really scared. What if they can't figure out what's wrong? What if I'm dying?" He sat next to me, took my hand. His touch made me want to vomit, but I held steady. "You're not dying," he said softly. "I promise you, we're going to figure this out. But what if we don't? What if my organs just fail? What happens then?" I watched his face carefully, saw the flicker of something predatory cross his features. Then we'd look at transplants, I suppose. That's worst case scenario, though. Would I even qualify for transplants? I mean, if multiple organs are failing, it would be difficult, he admitted, and I swear I heard eagerness in his voice. "The waiting lists are long. Most people don't get the organs they need in time." "That's so unfair," I said, letting my voice break. "That someone could die just because there aren't enough organs available. There should be another way." Jake's eyes lit up. I'd given him the opening he needed. "There are alternative options. Black market, technically, but sometimes that's the only way." "Black market organs?" I made my voice shocked but curious. "Is that even real?" "Oh, it's very real," he said, warming to the subject. "Huge industry, actually. People willing to sell their organs, people willing to buy them. Saves lives that the traditional system would let die." "But where do the organs come from?" I pressed. "Do people really just sell them?" He paused, weighing how much to reveal. But he was arrogant, convinced I was. Too naive, too trusting to ever suspect him. Some do. Others, well, let's just say not everyone who provides organs does so voluntarily. My stomach turned, but I kept my expression innocently confused. "What do you mean?" Jake leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Sarah, I'm going to tell you something, but you have to promise me you won't freak out." "Okay," I whispered, playing the devoted wife perfectly. "My work isn't actually medical sales. It's procurement. I find viable candidates, develop relationships with them, and when the time is right, I facilitate organ harvesting for clients willing to pay premium prices." There it was, confession on tape, crystal clear. "Candidates?" I breathed. "You mean people?" "I mean inventory," he corrected, his mask finally slipping completely. "And before you get all moral on me, these are people who won't be missed much anyway. Loners, mostly. Women without strong family ties. Women like you, actually." The casual way he said it, "women like you," made my blood freeze. This was the real Jake, the monster who'd been hiding behind kisses and kind words all along. "Like me?" I repeated, my voice small. He smiled, but there was nothing warm in it anymore. "Baby, did you really think this was about love? You've got a rare blood type, healthy organs despite the current issues, no serious family connections. You're perfect, worth at least $500,000 on the open market, maybe more. You've been poisoning me," I said, not as a question, but a statement. His smile widened. "Smart girl. Took you long enough to figure it out, though. I was starting to worry you might be too far gone before you caught on. It's more fun when they know, honestly, when they understand how completely they've been played." The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. This wasn't human. This was something else entirely. Something that wore a human face, but had nothing human underneath. The wedding, I whispered. Our entire relationship. All of. It was just a means to an end, he finished. Come on, Sarah. Did you really believe that meet cute at the coffee shop? That I just happened to be there? Just happened to find you interesting? I'd been watching you for months. Knew your schedule, your favorite places, your weaknesses. You were so desperate to be loved. So eager to believe someone could actually want you. Made you remarkably easy to manipulate. Each word was a knife, but I welcomed the pain. Because every word was being recorded. Every admission captured for the FBI agents listening outside. What happens now? I asked. Jake stood, stretched like he didn't have a care in the world. Now we move to the next phase. Dr. Chen is ready whenever we are. You'll go in for what you think is another round of tests, but you won't wake up. Well, not intact anyway. Your organs will wake up, just in different people. Wealthy people who can afford not to die. People who matter more than you ever did. He said it so. Matter-of-factly, like he was describing a business transaction rather than murder, rather than the systematic dismantling of my body for profit. And if I refuse? I challenged, done pretending to be meek and scared. Jake laughed. Refuse? Sweetheart, you can barely stand up most days. I've made sure of that. You're completely dependent on me, completely under my control. You don't have the strength to refuse anything. You'd be surprised what strength looks like, I said quietly. Something in my tone made him pause, made him really look at me for the first time. What did you do? He asked slowly. What you should have expected, I replied. I fought back. The apartment door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Jake's face went from confident to panicked in a heartbeat. He reached for me, whether to use me as a hostage or just to hurt me one last time. I'll never know. But Agent Martinez was faster. Had him on the ground, cuffed, reading him his rights before Jake could even process what was happening. Sarah Reeves, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, human trafficking, and organ trafficking, Martinez announced. Except Jake wasn't Sarah Reeves, and he wasn't under arrest. That was the wrong script. My name is Sarah, not his. Actually, it was. Daniel Reeves, you're under arrest. The rest was the same. They took him away screaming, threatening, promising revenge. But his words were empty now. He had no power anymore. No control. He was just a pathetic criminal who'd gotten caught because he'd underestimated his victim. Dr. Chen was arrested the same day, along with Marcus, Sandra, and 7 others in the network. The FBI found evidence of at least 12 women who'd been victimized over the past 5 years. Some were dead, organs long since sold. Others were in various stages of cultivation, as Jake had so charmingly put it. We saved 4 women who were still alive, still relatively healthy. 4 lives. That would have been stolen if I hadn't fought back. The trial was brutal, having to sit there, hearing in detail how Jake had planned everything, how he'd studied me, manipulated me, slowly killed me, hearing about the other women, seeing their photos, knowing I was supposed to be just another face in that horrific gallery. But I testified, put him away, made sure he and his whole sick network would never hurt anyone else ever again. Jake got life without parole. So did Dr. Chen. The others got, varying sentences, but they're all locked up where they belong. The judge called it one of the most disturbing cases she'd ever presided over. Said Jake showed no remorse whatsoever, even during sentencing. He'd actually smirked at me from the defendant's table, like this was all just an inconvenience rather than justice finally being served. I'm still recovering. Physically, the chelation therapy worked, but the damage to my kidneys and liver was significant. I'll need monitoring for the rest of my life. Might need transplants eventually. The irony isn't lost on me. Emotionally, that's harder. How do you trust again after something like this? How do you believe in love when the man who promised forever only wanted you in pieces? Emma's been amazing through all of this. Never once said, I told you so, even though she absolutely could have. She just held me through the nightmares, reminded me I was strong, helped me rebuild a life that Jake tried to destroy. I changed my name, moved to a different city, started over, again. But this time on my terms, with my eyes wide open. I volunteer with human trafficking organizations now, help other women recognize warning signs, trust their instincts, because that's the thing about predators like Jake. They're good at what they do. They know how to spot vulnerability, how to exploit it, how to make you doubt yourself until it's almost too late. But almost is the key word. Almost is what saves you if you're willing to fight. I think about the other women sometimes. Jessica, Melissa, Amanda, All the names in those files who didn't make it out, who trusted the wrong person and paid with their lives. I think about how easily I could have been just another name, another file, another victim forgotten by everyone except the people who loved them. But I'm not. I'm here, survived, scarred, but stronger for it. And I've turned my nightmare into purpose, my trauma into activism. If my story can save even one woman from falling for the same con, from trusting the same kind of monster, then maybe all this horror meant something. Jake tried to reduce me to parts, to components with price tags, tried to convince me I was worthless, except for what could be extracted and sold. But he was wrong, dead wrong. I'm worth more than my organs, more than my body, more than whatever value some sick bastard assigns to me. And so is every woman out there who's been made to feel small, made to feel like they don't matter, made to feel like they exist only for someone else's benefit. We matter. We survive. We fight back. And sometimes, just sometimes, we win. So that's my story. The golpe I never saw coming. The traición that almost cost me everything. And the venganza that came from surviving and fighting back. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but these stories need to be told. They need to be out there so other people can spot the warning signs, can trust their gut when something feels off. What do you think? Have you ever had an experience where someone you trusted turned out to be completely different than who they claimed to be? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. And I know there are others out there who need to know they're not alone in surviving betrayal like this. If this story resonated with you, or if you think it might help someone else, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss future stories, because unfortunately, there are too many more out there that need to be heard. Thanks again for being here, for listening, and for being part of this community. Stay safe out there, everyone. Trust your instincts. They might just save your life.